Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. I hope you all are fine and well at your home and enjoying your studies with Pakistan International School Taif. Dear students, I welcome you in Pakistan International School Taif's virtual learning system. As you know, this is biology class for second year boys and girls. And in this lecture, we will talk about chapter number 20, reproduction, which we have studied already, which we have started actually already. And our today's topic is female reproductive cycle and hormonal control. Dear students, in the previous lecture, we have studied about male and female reproductive systems. In that, we have seen that reproductive systems, their function, their structure. Today we will see female reproductive cycle and its hormonal control. Female reproductive system carry two ovaries, uterus, cervix and vagina. These are the parts which we have studied in detail. Today we will see that reproductive cycle, how it goes on. So let's get started. Female reproductive cycle. If we see the cycle means it's going on monthly basis again and again. So that is the menstrual called as menstrual cycle as well. Menstrual cycle has evolved to follow lunar cycle, that is almost of 28 days. And these 28 days, after this, the cycle repeats again in the next month. This, however, varies month to month and can be different in different women. It can vary due to external conditions and internal conditions of the body, that it can change on monthly basis as well, due to some circumstances, as well as it is different in different women due to their health condition, due to environmental condition, due to the places, the areas where they live, etc. So this menstrual cycle or reproductive cycle just carried out two different cycles in that is uterine cycle as well as ovarian cycle. So this cycle, whether it is uterine or ovarian cycle, so we'll go through follicular phase, ovulation phase and post ovulatory, or that is called luteal phase. Its hormonal control is done by certain hormones. For example, FSH, that is glycoprotein hormone. And what is its function? It stimulates follicular maturation during follicular phase. Follicular maturation, the follicles, the cells which surrounds the oocytes or the egg cell in the ovaries, that is follicle, and it gets matured during follicular phase by FSH, that is called follicle stimulating hormone. It stimulates a steroid hormone secretion also, that is called estrogen. Estrogen is secreted by granulosa cells of mature ovarian follicles. So when these follicles get mature, so they will start to release estrogen. luteinizing hormone, that is also glycoprotein, and these two hormones FSH and LH are secreted from pituitary gland, and then these pituitary gland secretions like FSH and LH, they stimulate the follicles in the ovaries. So they are triggered by gonadotropins. Gonadotropins or gonadotropin releasing hormones which are released from hypothalamus. Then they stimulate pituitary gland to secrete FSH and then LH, and then FSH and LH. Then they perform their functions and estrogen and progesterone start to secrete. So LH stimulates a steroid hormone secretion, that is estrogen, that also helps to release estrogen um, from these follicles, as well as that helps in the mid-cycle surge at day 14. So we will discuss this after a few minutes. So this mid-cycle surge of LH, like a high increase of luteinizing hormone that helps in the ovulation, means release of egg cell. Progesterone production by corpus luteum. So when this follicle ovulation is done, so follicle starts to become corpus luteum, and from corpus luteum progesterone is released, so that helps to maintain pregnancy. Negative feedback mechanism controls a cycle, inhibin a hormone, as well as these hormones by themselves, they perform negative feedback mechanism, in that how all these functions going on, we will see right now. First, we will talk about, because in the previous we have just talked about that there is divided into two cycles. These two cycles go side by side, not separately, like ovarian cycle and uterine cycle. So first we will see in detail ovarian cycle. So in ovarian cycle we will see follicular phase. In follicular phase means the follicle is going to be mature, and the egg cell is developing in that. So you can see here in this circle follicular phase which is going on here. So this one is ovulatory phase, and then pre-ovulatory phase. Now we will talk about all these one by one. So from day 8 to day 1 to 8, because that cycle is of 28 days, or in some women it can be like 30, 31, up to 35 days. So that depends on different circumstances. So day 1 to 4, or sometimes we can say day 1 to 5. So that is FSH and LH relatively high level, which is released from pituitary gland. So they stimulate development of 10 to 20 follicles like this. 10 to 20 follicles will be stimulated, but results in the full maturation of a single dominant follicle and appearing in a mid follicular phase. Means now the previous all out of 10 to 20 follicle, just one will get be matured and other will be degenerate. Remainder undergo astrasia, means disintegration or degeneration. Then a high LH and FSH triggered by drop in estrogen and progesterone levels from last cycle. When in the last cycle, like after menstruation, this process is going to be done after menstruation, like after bleeding. So that when the bleeding starts, then this is going to be happen. Bleeding starts means this is end of this cycle. So At that time the follicles start to be mature by increasing LH and FSH from triggering by the decreasing amount of estrogen and progesterone, because estrogen and progesterone just maintains the pregnancy, but if pregnancy is not done, menstruation occurs, so then estrogen and progesterone levels, it drops down quickly, and LH and FSH are going to be secreted from pituitary gland at high level. So estrogen levels start to rise as follicle development occurs. So because now follicle is developing in this direction, so like this one, then this, and this one, so follicle is going to be mature. So as the follicle is going to be mature, its granulosa cells just start to rise the estrogen level in the body. The next stage of ovarian cycle, that phase 2 of the same follicular stage, so that is day 9 to 14. That is very very important or as well. So follicle increases its size. So you can see it's increasing its size. It means the granulosa cells. Okay, what are granulosa cells? Actually they are the cells which you can see here in brownish color in the follicles, pinkish colors. All these are granulosa cells, and in the center the dot is the ovum or egg cells. So they not only, granulosa cells not only uh, just protect the egg cells, but they also nourish the egg cells, as well as they produce most of like estrogen, what we can say, receptors to release more of the, receiving more of the estrogen. So localized accumulation of fluid among the granulosa cells, these are the cells, and this one, like all these pink one, and then the whitish part is like the space, the lumen antron, where the fluid filled central cavity antron is there, because it just drags the oocyte or egg cell to at one side, because now egg cell is going to be released. So that follicular phase, ovarian cycle, that is this one which is encircled with the brownish color. So transforming from primary follicle to Graafian follicle now, because the cell is going to be, follicle is going to be increased in size, so now it is going to be Graafian follicle. We name it Graafian follicle. So oocyte occupies eccentric position, like outside at one side from where it escapes out, or it just when the follicle is ruptured, it can move out easily. That is surrounded by cumulus oophorus, 2 to 3 layers of granular cells. So we have just talked about granulosa cells. So yes, we can see here, like this is, and we can say an ovum, and around that there are certain cells present here. These are called granulosa cells. Now what happened in follicle, we can say that in follicles now these granulosa cells are all around here, around the cells, but here you can see, here is the ovum. So around the ovum the cells are, granulosa cells are present. So these cells are called cumulus oophorus. They not only just nourish the cells, protect the egg cells, but they also produce steroids and luteinizing hormones receptors. So they accept, like pituitary gland is releasing luteinizing hormone, and these cells are having more receptors in that for receiving LH. So this is going to be increased more and more, and this cavity is called antrum. So a rise in estrogen by granulosa cells. Now these granulosa cells are releasing estrogen as well, associated with follicular maturation. So follicles get matured by releasing mm, releasing more estrogen by granulosa cells. There is a hormone that is inhibin that produced by granulosa cells that restricting number of follicles maturing, because one cell is getting matured and now it is going to be ovulated. So inhibin is going to be produced by granulosa cells, which um, gives the feedback mechanism to stop or to restrict the follicle maturation right now. Now follicles get too much mature, then what will happen? There is ovulation. Ovulation, the same like ovarian cycle, that is day 14, midday of like 1 month, 1 to 28 days. There are so 14 days. There is rapid enlargement of a follicle and rupture of follicle with extrusion of oocyte and adherent cumulus ophorus. Like with the egg cell, you can see here in the circle, this one, the egg cell, it is like 2 to 3 layers of cells of granulosa cells are just adherent with that, that is called cumulus ophorus. And uh, like that depends on the physiology and anatomy of that women, that and the rupturing of or this ovulation just gets they get pain, that is called metastachymers. So now there is a rise in estrogen, and that is due to the mid cycle surge of LH, to a lesser extent FSH. Now FSH is decreased in ovulation and LH is going to be increased. If you see this we can see here this green one, that is this here, the green one, that is um, FSH, and this blue one is what, that is estrogen, that is LH, it is increased. And here that is estrogen, and that is rapidly increased here, but before ovulation. So at the time of ovulation, that is rapidly decreased, and progesterone starts to like increase at very rapid rate here, because it has to maintain pregnancy. This is uterine cycle. How this is going on, we will talk about in a few minutes. Right now we are gonna see ovarian cycle. So immediately before ovarian cycle, there is drop on estrogen, as we have seen this line, it is, you can see this line, that is rapid decrease of estrogen and increase in progesterone is going to be happened here. Ovulation follows within 18 hours of mid-cycle surge at this time, and if not enough of LH surge, like high increase of LH, so there will be no ovulation, and that is called anovulatory phase. Now we will see after the ovarian cycle, this is ovulation, and after this, now this circle represents the luteal phase. Luteal phase means the formation of corpus luteum. You can see here in the ovary. This is ovulation, and now this is, you can see the yellowish appearance of this follicle. So that is from day 15 to 28. So remainder of the follicle are retained in the ovary. So it remains in the ovary and capillaries are penetrated in that, and fibroblasts from the theca cells. Theca cells are, uh, we can say they are the cells which having the function of endocrine, and these produce endocrine cells. Endocrine cells means they started to produce another hormone that is called progesterone, and they are produced from the fibroblast cells of this corpus luteum, sorry, of this follicle. So granulosa cells undergo luteinizing, that is called corpus luteum. The formation, a major source of sex hormones, that is uh, with sex hormones, they are estrogen and progesterone secreted during post-ovulatory phase, and this leads to marked increase of these two hormones during this phase. So in ovarian cycle, we have studied about if conception and implantation occur at this stage, corpus luteum doesn't regress, because we are now on post ovulatory phase. So corpus luteum doesn't regress and maintained by gonadotropins secreted by trophoblast cells. Trophoblast cells are present in the ovum. This is ovum. When it started, it started to increase in mass by dividing mitotically. So trophoblast cells are the cells which formed around in the layer of this ovum. So these are trophoblast cells which are like surrounding this all mass of cells. So they started to produce gonadotropins, um, and progesterone also. And then if conception and implantation occur, like the implantation of egg cell into the uterus, if it is happened, so these trophoblast cells become glandular and start to produce progesterone and estrogen. If conception doesn't occur successfully, so corpus luteum regress, degenerates, disintegrates, and menstruation occurs. So drops in steroid sex hormones lead to rise in gonadotropins and initiate next cycle. When FSH and LH, that is FSH and LH, when they are increased, so there will be follicle maturation, and the next cycle will be started. If progesterone and estrogen will be increased, so there will be implantation. Definitely there is implantation, then they are going to be increased. So let's talk about ovarian and uterine cycle. So you can see here, we use this color. So we can see here hypothalamus is releasing gonadotropin, releasing hormones, and interior pituitary releasing these hormones FSH and LH. So FSH thus is going to be used for maturation of follicles. This is secondary follicle and mature Graafian follicle, and luteinizing hormone. FSH just performs its role up to here. So luteinizing hormone just gives a feedback to this FSH for decreasing this one FSH, because now corpus luteum has been formed, so FSH is going to be decreased because pregnancy is maintained right now. So this also Graafian follicle and this ovulatory phase, this increase in estrogen level. So in proliferating phase means increase of the vascularization of the endometrium of uterus, as well as the maturation of follicles. And then you can see this progesterone and estrogen level just going to be have like effect of endometrium or uterine wall, in which if pregnancy is sustained, so this endometrium just gets more vascularized, most glandular, to release more of these hormones to sustain pregnancy. So if not, so what happened, graphian, that is corpus luteum, just degenerates, and then menstruation or bleeding occurs, which comes from this 1 to 2, and then it move on up to 5 to 8 days. So here we can see at this stage, follicle stimulating hormone is uh, increased here, but when LH surge is there, day 14 is there, estrogen is also going to be decreased before for day 14. And then here is progesterone if pregnancy is maintained, otherwise it will be decreased, and then FSH start to increase again. So how the uterine cycle moves on, we will see here. It is influenced by cyclic production of steroid hormones and causes changes in the uterus involving endometrium and cervical mucus. Uterine cycle or endometrium overall view of that, if we see that uterine wall is made up of superficial layer that sheds during menstrual bleeding, this all in which these vessels are present, and then we are having basal layers that doesn't take part but regenerate the superficial layer. The basal layer has a straight arterioles, whereas in the superficial layer they get a spiral ones, and that is important like in shedding of the wall. So in proliferative phase of uterine cycle, we can see occurs during follicular phase, like we can see here this one, proliferative phase. So endometrium exposed to estrogen, when more estrogen is there, as we have seen regeneration from the last menstrual cycle is, and glands in the endometrium are straight in this phase, parallel to one another, and contains little secretion in the endometrium of this uterus. Endometrium is the inner layer of the uterus, which sheds in menstruation and maintains in the pregnancy. And here we can see FSH is going to be decreased and estrogen is going to be increased. Now uterine cycle, if we see uterine cycle secretory phase, so in this we can see that after ovulation, progesterone production causes secreting changes in endometrial. So endometrial glands start to secrete more progesterone, and here if you see this cycle, so progesterone is going to be increased, and more secretion of progesterone. Once corpus luteum also secretes that progesterone and estrogen, and when endometrium as a result of that, endometrium starts to be vascularized, more vessels are going to be present here, and more glandular, so that secretes um, more progesterone. So appearance of secretory vacuoles in glandular epithelial below nuclei of the cells of this layer, and secretion in lumen of glands which become tortuous and develop a serrated margins. If you see serrated margins, you can see here like this, serrated margins are present here due to the like lumens of glands. Then we will see the menstruation phase. If In the luteal phase, you can see it lasts 14 days. Like luteal phase, the last phase after 14 days after ovulation. So there is a regression of corpus luteum, decline in estrogen and progesterone, because that is menstruation now, because no pregnancy is there. So it leads into intense spasmodic contraction, spiral section of this endometrial. This is spiral section, if you see. So here are more vascularization, arteries and veins are there, and a spiral like formation of this endometrium is over there. So that is ischemic necrosis is done. Necrosis means degeneration or breaking down superficial layer and then bleeding. These spasms are associated with prostaglandins, which are associated with increased uterine contraction during menstrual flow. And so prostaglandins also perform very important role. These are the group of hormones, different type of hormones which release for different metabolic activities in the cells. So here for uterine contraction, they are also going to be released. So due to this spasm or this contraction, there is bleeding as well as shedding of the endometrium, and there is a pain also as well. So you can see here um, in the in the circle there is a menstrual phase, but with that you can see that is developing follicles, primary and like primary oocyte, and then developing follicles are again going to be produced here. Like it means that another cycle has going to be started. There are some other changes with that in the body, like the person and the female is having the body temperature rising about zero point 0.5 degrees centigrade after ovulation. So if there is conception or pregnancy, the temperature is maintained throughout the pregnancy. And breast changes, breast swelling during luteal phase due to increase in progesterone level, as well as some physiological changes are there, like change in moods and increase in emotional changes or liability, like mood swings are there. Sometimes aggressions can be in response of higher level of progesterone. So dear students, that's it for today. I hope you understood the lesson. Inshallah, we will see you in the next lecture. Wish you all the best. Allah Hafiz.